Welcome to Alan Hudson's Maverick Tales. Sit back and enjoy some of these stories from one of the game's greatest players. SRB Media.
You went to Stoke without Maureen, as you've alluded to earlier. At what stage did Maureen join you in the Potteries?
I can't remember. I was enjoying myself so much. Yeah, I moved in a new house, and my friend, a great friend of mine called Bobby Eyre, he's still around. Bobby, he lives just up the road from me. I don't see him much, but I love him to death. He come up. I bought a new stereo from High Street, Kensington, and he come up with me to Stoke. And funnily enough, we took two young ladies up. We went into the pub on the way, and they come and stayed with us for 2 or 3 days. So that's how I moved into my new home with two strange ladies. While Maureen was back here because she didn't want to leave the West End and go to somewhere like Stoke-on-Trent. That was below her, So yeah, I would live with Sir and Dame Judith for a little while, and I enjoyed my stay with them. I must say, Judith Hurst was fantastic for me. She was great. I can't speak highly enough of Judith. She looked after me as if I was a son, really.
Yeah.
Although she's not that old, Dame. Yeah, it was so easy to settle in there, and I think the life suited me. There was no binoculars on me. There was no Fleet Street.
Yeah.
No wonder he's having a nightmare. He's in the pub again, and all that. There was none of that. The people of Stoke-on-Trent expected you to be in the pub. If you didn't go in the pub, they would wonder why. That they're that way. They still are now. I was up there 3 weeks ago, and it's just a joy when you walk in, and they expected you to be around the place and everything else. Where in Chelsea, you had to. Every time someone looked at a pub in Chelsea or in London, anywhere, you wonder if they, were an informant or something, or part of a conspiracy. It's, so it was a dream move, really, in many ways, and it was too good to be true, and I suppose that's why it all went wrong. That freak gust of wind, that someone up there said he's enjoying himself too much here. We got to stop this.
SRB Media.
And an amazing story. This is true. 2 days ago, I get a phone call from a friend of mine who used to have a local bar in Fulham. He's a very well respected. He's an antique car dealer, very wealthy man. His name is Bobby Bentley. He won't mind me mentioning his name on air. He's been very, very successful. And he says, Al, I haven't spoken to him for quite a while. He moved out in Hampshire way. And he said, Al, he says, something's just weird really happened. I went, what? He said, I've just had a fella in my car showroom wanting to buy this beautiful car from me. And he said he's from Stoke-on-Trent. So I went, oh, really? I said, good people. He went, oh, good people. He said, he loves you. He said, he's Stoke City fan. He said, my hero is Alan Hudson. He said, well, he says, he's a very, very good friend of mine. He said, oh, good, give him my regards. And he said, let me tell you a story about him. So he said, I'm at home one night, he said, with my wife, and there's a knock on the door. He says, and it's Alan. He said, and he's covered in blood.
Blimey.
And he said, are you Stoke City supporters? So they said, yes. He said, well, can you do me a favour? One, can you call the AA? And two, can you call me a cab? So a cab got there. I jumped in a cab and went home. They called the AA to pull my Mini out of another ditch right down the road from them. This one weren't on top of the roundabout. This was another case. And this fella walked into his showroom and told him the story. He said, I would laugh, and he said, I can just imagine it. I said, well, I got back to my home in Barlaston, and there was a police car outside my house, and I had to go around the back door and hide and wait till they're gone. So I got crept in the back door, and my missus went, well, they found the car in the ditch, but they can't, they've had the police dogs looking over, because I hit another 10 yards to left ball, I hit the brick wall and not the bush. And they sent the police dogs over the back where there was a big park over the back. They've had the police dogs out, and they said they found the car, but there's no body. I said, well, I've been here in the garden for half an hour waiting for them to go. I've been watching you talk to them through the window. So,
oh dear God.
Oh, mate. So it's ironical that I was going to pull you on that one. I'm a bad driver. I'm a bad, what do you call it? What do they call you when you cross the road? You're a
liability.
A liability, yeah.
SRB Media.
In fact, I was talking to Paul today, and I was just been reading his book, Paul Merson.
Okay.
And he tells the story in his book. I know the story. You might have heard the story, but while he was playing for Portsmouth, he said to Harry one day, "Look," he said, "Harry," he says, I feel a little bit tired." He says, "I think I need a break." So he said, "Well," he said, "you're only coming in 3 days a week anyway," because I think he just left Villa or something, hadn't he? And he'd gone. He said, "Well, you're only doing 3 days a week. You're coming down." He said, "But Harry," he says, "I'm just feel a little bit tired." He said, "Well, go on." He says, "Have 2 weeks off." He says, "Well, I've been gambling too much." He says, "So I'm going to go book myself into the Priory, to the Gambling Anonymous." He says, "Well, you go and do that. Well done." He says, "That's good." He said, "And when you come back, I want you spot on, but do some training when you're at the Priory. Just do a bit of jogging and tick over." Anyway, he says, I've gone, and he said, "I've gone home." He said, "I've to the missus, pack your bags, we're going to Barbados." So he says, we're sitting on the beach in Barbados. He says, this fella comes by, and he says, "Paul, how are you?" He says, "Yeah, I'm good." He says, "Oh, you enjoyed yourself?" He said, "Yeah, lovely." He said, "I've got a nice glass of wine there, a bottle of wine." He said, "Can I join you?" He said, "Yeah, sit down, have a drink." He said, we sat there, we had an hour together, and he said, "That's good." He says, and as he left, he went, "Oh, by the way," he said, "I'm good friends with Harry." So Merson said, thought to himself, he goes, "Oh my God, what's going on now? He's going to tell Harry. I'm supposed to be in the Priory." So he said, "I'll get back," and I found out that this fella had phoned Harry, and Harry says, "I've just seen one of your players." And he went, "Well, who would that be?" He said, "Paul Merson." He says, "Oh, don't tell me you got an addiction as well." He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well," he said he's in a clinic. He's addicted to gambling and drinking and everything. Have you have addiction? He said, "You got what addiction you got?" He said, "No." He said, "I'm in Barbados." He said, "I'm sitting with him on the beach." He went, "Oh." So anyway, Merson gets back, and he said, I'm expecting a right bollocking from Harry, and he said, "I got home and Harry never said a word." He said he didn't say a word to me. He said he knew that I had to perform, and he said he never ever brought the subject up. And for me, that's great management.
Yes.
You know, if that had been me at Arsenal with Terry Neal, it would have been all over the papers. It would have been all over there because he wanted to be the big I am. But Harry played it shrewdly, and he went, "No, I won't mention it because he knows he owes me one."
SRB Media.
Steve Highway, Ray Kennedy, and Terry McDermott. That was the Liverpool team. And as you said, oh, great team. But as you said, Al, you were struggling because of the injury previously.
SRB Media.
Tony watered the pitch. What happened that day when you got to the Victoria ground? Because you didn't think that you were playing, and you told Tony that you wasn't fit enough to play.
I told Tony on the train coming back from London. We just played at Highbury. We drew 2-2, and or 1-1. We played. I think we played 2-2 at West Ham the day before. So we played 3 games in 4 days on very bad pitches, and my ankle couldn't take the hard pitches and stuff like that. And I was just. I wouldn't say I was in pain with my ankle. I just knew if I'd have played on the Monday, it would have just done more damage. It was untreatable, and because I'd been playing all the time, the doctors at Stoke weren't that good. I mean, our doctor was a gynecologist, so that just tells you about
Yeah.
what he knew about ankles and knees. And then when confronting Tony, I said, "Look, Tony," I said, I spoke to him like I spoke to my dad and my best friend. I said, "Look, I think Monday's going to be out for me. It's heartbreaking, but it's really today they call it was it 2 points a win then?
Yeah, it was. Yep.
Yeah, today they call it a 6-pointer, but in them days, I mean, it was a difference between us going on and winning the league or Liverpool going on to win it, really, because I truly believe when you mention our team, read our team out, and then you read the Liverpool team out, you wouldn't think that we could actually win the league. They had so many big name players and internationals or whatever. It just goes to show. After doing a show with Dennis Mortimer, who you put me on to the other day, that they won the European Cup with no internationals in their team. But I remember Tony's words to me were, "Look, when we get back, go into the hotel opposite, which we always did, the North Star's right opposite the station, and we'll have a few." He said, "We'll have a couple of drinks and we'll talk it over." So him and I got into the discussion, and he said, "Look, please do me one favour." He never used to ask me to do anything, and he said, "Look, when this bar closes, please go home. Don't go to a nightclub standing about on your ankle. Don't go out tomorrow, Sunday, and have a drink down your local. Stay in and prepare for the game on Monday, because I've got a funny feeling we're going to have some rain, and I think the ground will be all right for you." Anyway, I knew what he was on about, because before that he told me stories about how he used to talk to Stanley Matthews into playing when he wasn't fit. But Stanley was 50.
Yeah.
I was 24. Anyway, I woke up on the Sunday and I went down. I looked outside and we still had the drought on. I knew that we had no rain, and on the Monday I woke up for the game knowing I wasn't playing because we still had no rain. I got dressed. I prepared just as if I was playing, but knowing I wasn't, which was even more heartbreaking. And got in my car, drove down the A34, and all the way thinking, how am I going to sit through this match? That's all over my mind. I'm going to have to leave. If Liverpool go 1-0 up, I'm just going to have to leave, get in my car and come home, because it was that vital a match. And I got to as at Stoke City, there was no dress code. There was no, Tony did things so differently. There was no team meetings before the game. There was nothing. You just turned up by 2:15 for a 3:00 kickoff and get on with it. And I got there about 2:10 as usual, signed the autographs outside the ground, only a handful of people, and walked through, really despondent, and walked in straight into the dressing room, which it was a very tiny corridor. The Stoke City ground was very small, and I walked in there and I see my boots there sparkling and my shirt hanging up and a couple of other players. But I was quite ignorant about who was in the dressing room, and I just turned around and thought I'd walk in to see Tony and say to him, "Like, you tried this with Stan, it might have worked with Stan, but it's not going to work with me, because I'm not going to play against Liverpool, play badly, and we get beat because of my ankle." It was that bad. And I got towards his door, and as I got towards his door, something kind of clicked in my mind, and I turned back. And I walked down the tunnel, and as I walked down the tunnel, 3 or 4 of the Liverpool players were coming up with mud on their shoes. And they said, I can remember someone, I don't know if it was Clements or one of them said to me, they called me Huddy. They went, "Huddy, what's going on? We only live along the road. It took us 45 minutes to get here. It's Easter Monday, and we haven't had rain for... There's a drought. We haven't had rain for weeks." And I just turned around and said, "Look, what you don't understand, the Potteries is a strange. We got our own weather. We got our own drizzle. We got our own weather up here." I said, I haven't even been on the pitch. I was just going to have a look, and I'm delighted to say that you've got mud on them." And I turned around, walked away, and walked into Tony's office, and he just picked his head up from what he was doing, and he didn't show any emotion, nothing. which was incredible. It was like a movie scene, and he just said to me, "How many?" So I said, well, they're on their way, Tone. I said, you better give me 14. So he gave me 14 complimentary tickets, as he always did. He knew all my family and friends would come out from London every home game, every away game. He gave me my tickets, and I just walked out, and he never said nothing. There was no mention of the pitch. There's no mention of me playing or not playing. He was like, he was the opposite of Clouseau,
Yeah.
He was so smart. And I just walked in, and I went from zero to off the scale. I was just in heaven, because I played well in London, them 2 matches. We played well. We were playing well as a team. And I was sure we could beat Liverpool if I played. And I just got ready for the game, warmed up, and the adrenaline got me through it, and the pitch was heavy. And I remember at one stage we were 1-0 up, and the ball was running towards the touchline and towards the director's box where Tony was, and my family used to sit there. And I remember nutmegging Tommy Smith along the way. Tommy came in with a sliding tackle to get me.
Yeah.
But he not to injure me, but to get me to stop me, and I just flicked it through his legs as he went down and ran away the other side. And my uncle had this habit of whistling, and I heard my uncle's whistle of approval, and there was absolutely nothing there. When the roof blew off, the roof had to blow off that day to stop us winning. Yeah. We were absolutely superb, and I'm not just talking. I mean, my performance was the best of my life, but I'm sure other players enjoyed my performance. But every man. I mean, to beat that Liverpool team without the names you mentioned, with young Danny Bowers left back. Danny had only played a handful of games. He had a great potential. If the roof hadn't blown off, he would have been our next left back. Eric Skills, nobody knew how old he was. He didn't have a passport. And Alan Dodd obviously was my favourite centre half of all time. He was the best centre half I've ever played with, and like Greenough, uncapped. So it was an incredible. And when Shankly came in the dressing room, I just couldn't wait, because he spoke to me in front of several players in the dressing room that you might say weren't fans of mine.
I mean, what he did say is, I didn't think I'd ever see a performance that surpasses Peter Doherty, but you just did it, son. I mean, that was one of the greatest performances that Bill Shankly had seen.
SRB Media.
Well, they always point out the one game for England against Hungary at Wembley, and when Puskas tore us apart, not single-handedly, because they were a fantastic nation. And they said we went back to the drawing board after that game. Well, we didn't make a very good job of going back to the drawing board. The people that went back to the drawing board couldn't draw. It was as simple as that. What's going on? It's instead of they took the other route in the game rather than the route that should have been taken. I read the great Len Shackleton's book, and he has exactly the same. He's like, he would have been great on with me and you this morning, because he would have been saying exactly the same things. And there was a man that was as good as anyone's ever played the game. I never see him play. My father see him play, but he went, that's how you got to play the game. He's set an example for all kids to come through and play like that, because that's why the grounds were so full in the olden days, just to watch people like him. But nowadays, they say it, even managers say it now, and the pundits say it's a results game, but it might be a results game. But as we always say, it isn't a results game. It's an entertainment. When you're paying the kind of money out you're paying week in, week out, you want to be entertained. And I don't care whether it's football. If I'm watching cricket, I've gone over to watch the one day now, and I love it because it's entertainment. It's watching people. It's watching two great cricketers play against each other and try and outdo one another. A great bowler against a great batsman. That's great entertainment. it's not. It was results go out the window. All right, they work it out how many runs they want, but then they go for it. It's you know, I wouldn't pay out money to go and watch Des O'Connor, but I would Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
And that is our standards in this country are poor. There's no doubt about it. When you're watching a lead up to a game and you're watching about Jordan Henderson and his father and all this, with the greatest respect to Jordan Henderson and his family, good luck to you. And, hard work. He didn't work any harder than my father. They're saying he deserves all the success because he worked so hard at his game. He was hell bent on, making it and all that. Well, my father had a harder life than him, but he didn't get picked for England because he worked 24 hours a day. What's going on? We're looking for that George Best. If he was alive today, if George Best was watching the game with me last night, he'd have gone, "Oh, I'm glad I never played in the World Cup. Is this what it's all about?" We never seen the George Best, and yet we're talking about the greatest players on the planet.
Absolutely. I mean,
they are not the greatest players on the planet. They might be a World Cup, but it's not the world's best players by a long chalk.
No.
That's why I love the cricket, because the cricket do bring the best players in the world out.
SRB Media.
You also had a great time in Tampa. I'm Still Standing is a song that reminds you of those days at the end of the season. So you take up the story. You've just beaten Wolverhampton Wanderers 4-0. You've stayed up. What happened next?
Well, like any other club you've been at. I mean, and I was very fortunate, even in Seattle. I mean, we went on a pre-season tour in Seattle. We went to Santa Anita. I mean, it was in right down on the beachfront, and it was incredible. Santa Monica. We always, at the end of every season, you'd have a tour. That's wherever you went, and we got out of trouble on the Monday morning. I went in and knocked on the manager's door, and I said, "Where are we going on tour?" And he said, "We're not going anywhere." He said, "We've had no money." I said, "Well, you can't do this to the players." I said, "Do you realise what we've just done?" I said, "You'd have been in the second division if we hadn't have done this." I said, and everybody's put their shift in. Everybody's been brilliant. The whole, from the team spirit that we built. And he said, "No, I'm afraid we're not going anywhere." So I put in a call to my friend who I knew in Tampa Bay, because I had a small home over there, a small townhouse over, which I bought while I was in Seattle. And my friend, I said, "Look, see if you can fix up a game against the Rowdies," and Tampa Bay Rowdies. And Rodney Marsh, I think, was maybe just a little bit involved with them still. And all we need is them to pay our airfare and our flights, and we'll give you a game. And they agreed to it. And I went back into to Bill Asprey again and told him, and he become our manager again. So I said, I haven't picked you to become our manager, but we had to have him coming because we were going to Stoke City. So my best mate, Tony Davies at the time, who never missed a game, and he was my mate and stayed with me in Seattle, this, that and the other. And I said, well, part of the deal was that Tony comes as our physio. So we had Tony as a physio. So it was a party from the moment the plane doors closed in London to when they closed when we left. I left them at the airport on the way back because I stayed over there. But as I put in my thinking, we stayed in a hotel called the Hall of Fame, and the lads got it changed to the Hall of Shame. Such were the shenanigans that went on there. It was unbelievable. I don't think they were ready. Tampa Bay wasn't ready for the boys from the Potteries. The young lads especially.
So you could argue that they were called Tampa Bay, and you put the Rowdies in it.
Well, it wasn't. It wasn't the older ones. It was the younger ones, the Chris Mascaries and the Ian Painters, and we have 3 or 4 kids, and who were a great part of our squad, and they just couldn't believe it. They was in heaven over there, and I took them to all the best places in Clearwater, to the best restaurants and bars and all this, and they were just in heaven. It is a great part of the world. To think that on after the game on Saturday, on Sunday, we weren't going anywhere, and then we are.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, we're in Tampa Bay, so it was all ended well,
And what goes on tour stays on tour. Did any of them want to stay with you for the extra 3 weeks, Alan? Were they forced to go back?
Well, no, we only had the week because of the one game, but I'm sure had it been a month, nobody would have argued. Yeah, no. I mean, me and my friend who stayed over there, we went to the airport to see him off, and it was, there was tears and everything, it was unbelievable. No, they had a wonder, and they deserved it. I mean, what they didn't do. I mean, people say, well, you was a saviour. I was a saviour in the dressing room. As I say, I went in, I had to lift a dark cloud, but on the field, all over the field, the goalkeeper, Peter Fox, was incredible form all season. I would say he saved them more than anybody on the field. Sammy done his part up front, and Brendan done his part at the back, and he would come up and score. He's got vital goals, and he could play centre forward and centre half. George Berry was loved there, so it all kind of come together. It kind of brought them all together, and we used to go out before we went to Tampa. We would just go around Stoke raising money for the tour, for the spending money, because the club had no money. But it was just an excuse to go out and have a good time. But it was a special. That's why I chose 1984, because I don't think we could do a series without talking about it. And I'm sure if you used to go around Stoke-on-Trent and ask people about that period, it was a memorable time.
It certainly was. It will live in the memory banks forever in the potteries. The return of
Tampa.
The return of the prodigal.
SRB Media.
But you introduced us to Reg the T-Boy as well, didn't you, in 1969?
Well, I introduced him to his music, but I was good. Well, he was not very music orientated. He was, as I say, he knew everything about everything, but he didn't really know too much about much. And I just said to him one day, because I was his roommate at that young age, and I said, mate, you got to get this album of this new singer called Elton John. So anyway, it kind of went over his head, and we're sitting there one night. We played at Everton, and we're in Merseyside, and we had dinner, and we went to bed. And as soon as we got in bed, just switched the telly on, and who's there but Elton? And I said, oh, you ain't going to believe it. I said, this is the fella I'm telling you about. You listen to his voice. He said, that's not Elton John. He said, that's Reggie. So I said, what do you mean it's Reggie? He said, yeah, he's a T-boy down the recording studio where Ron Harris, his wife, works. And they used to go up there and visit Ron's wife just to have a look round, and Venables, George Graham, all that little team, And Reggie was a T-boy, and Venables, being the white boy that he was at that time, and still is, said, sent him out to get some tea and sandwiches this particular day, and kind of ordered him. And then years later, when Reggie became Elton, and was big time, met him at a party one night, and was second I introduced you to him, he said, Reggie said, we've already met. And he says, and you can go over there and get me some champagne. So, which was a nice touch. So he'd become Elton, and I mean, I love Elton John, and I just love the way he is, and not only his music, where he's come from, his background, everything, and how he approaches everything. And on this show the other night, he just loves helping other people to improve their music, and he loves working with them. I think, as a footballer, I was the same with kids playing. I used to help kids after training or whatever, just trying to improve them, and he's the same in music terms.
And to listen to the rest of this podcast, head on over to www.patreon.com/SRB Media. Thank you.